last week on GlitchWitch.JPG, we were plants. This week we're saying plants. That was a bad joke. I came up with that beforehand. Whenever I come up with a joke beforehand, it's not good. I shouldn't say it, but then I do anyway. Last week, I covered the delightful internet horror series, The World of Mr. Plant, and this week we're back at it with plants. The new video from analog horror royalty Alex Kister called Botanophobia. Hello, my name is GlitchWitch.JPG. I make videos about internet horror, analog horror, digital horror, creepypastas, ARGs, internet urban legends, and sometimes survival horror video games. And as I just said, today we are covering a new video by Alex Kister, the creator of the Mandela Catalog. The Mandela Catalog is one of analog horror's biggest series, one of the I call it Wave 2 analog horror. Maybe one day I'll make a video about the different, generations of analog horror, but I consider like Local 58 and Gemini Home Entertainment like Wave 1, Phase 1. Phase 2 is your Walton Files, your Mandela Catalog, your Monument Mythos. And then I would say Phase 3 is like Greylock, McKinney Family Home Videos, Dr. Nowhere, and a lot of other like stuff that's come out in the past like year or so. So Mandela Catalog is iconic. I love it. I am a firm Stanny. I have a intruder tattoo. So I'm unwell, clearly. I like a lot of the work Alex does. He's done a few different non-Mandela Catalog things, and this is a new one. I believe this is a one-off video, but I'm not like 100% sure. It did just drop like 10 hours ago from when I'm watching this. So if there is a sequel, sorry. It feels pretty self-contained though, and it was like there's enough psychology for me to make an entire video about it. And you know what? Maybe there's not enough psychology for me to make an entire video about it, but I'm gonna try, like I always do. And yes, I have fake glitter freckles on my face. I was like, I'm just gonna wear a t-shirt today. Yes, JVIC Nation rise. I was overcompensating by putting glitter freckles on, and I put them on too low. They should probably be like here. And they're like here. I know, you don't have to comment. You don't have to comment telling me. Thank you. This is one of those where I think it's short enough that we can go ahead and take a look-see at it together. And then I have a lot of thoughts. So after that, we can go ahead and discuss it. So let's take a look.
When I was a young girl, I had a crippling fear of plants. This wasn't a problem until my mother became an exotic florist, as you can imagine. I wasn't afraid of grass or trees per se, but I did have a significant aversion to plants that my mother owned or studied. These include Venus flytraps, giant hogweed, pitcher plants, stuff like that. And even though I grew up in the humid climate of North Carolina, I still managed to have nightmares about saguaro cacti. These days, I can recognize the evolutionary purpose of these plants' defense mechanisms. Yeah, sure. But as a kid, it didn't make any sense. Obviously, these plants wanted to hurt me. They were oddly human-like, invasive and all-consuming, carefully crafted with alluring traps. It was terrible. If a person wanted to hurt me, I would be able to see the intention in their face and based on their movements. With a plant, I just hoped I was lucky enough that a seemingly harmless one was, in fact, harmless. I felt like they belonged to a classification separate from both botanical and animal life. It truly seemed like they were alive, like aware of their surroundings, thinking, feeling, all with nothing to show for it. At a certain point, these thoughts became too much to bear. My bedroom became the only space in the house that didn't have any plants. There was a constant anxiety that plagued my mind throughout the day, knowing what was just outside. I eventually had a complete mental breakdown. My mother never believed in my fear until that point. She was disappointed that I felt that way about her biggest passion. But after some convincing, she decided to get rid of all the plants to bring me peace. I felt so terribly guilty, but really eternally grateful for her understanding. She did make one exception. She wanted to keep her sunflowers, which had just started to bloom. I was okay with this, since my extensive research showed absolutely zero signs of sunflowers being harmful. Plus, they were going to be kept outside only. Soon began to feel comfortable in my own home again. However, my fears and past experiences left a scar that couldn't be healed alone. I started going to therapy to heal this wound. At the same time, my mother began to resent me. She started making passive remarks that blamed me for her newfound isolation. She also claimed that I was going to therapy because of her, and she was upset about not being good enough for me. I reassured her every time that it wasn't her. It was the plants. I obviously never told her, but she ended up being right. The conversations I had with my therapist became less about the plants and more because of my mother. When summer came around, the sunflowers bloomed quickly. Mother began claiming that she could hear them. I assumed she was referring to the long stalks brushing against the house on a windy day. But no, she said they would speak to her. I mean, I would laugh at her. But deep down, I was totally freaked out. She had never said something so bizarre about a plant in the 10 years she'd had them. Due to her resentment, I figured she was just trying to frighten me. She was the only one that knew my deepest fears, after all. I would overhear her having conversations. She didn't know I was listening to her. Turns out, it wasn't just to scare me after all. She spoke to them more lovingly than she did with me. I felt betrayed, neglected, and I felt frightened again. I never had a reason to be afraid of the sunflowers until now. Moments after this experience, my mother unexpectedly died of a heart attack. This impacted me way more than I anticipated. Despite the lack of affection she gave me towards the end of her life, I felt horrifically depressed. It took me a long time to get used to living on my own and looking after the house. After her death, I never went into the backyard ever again. I never watered the flowers. I hoped they would die as soon as possible. I never bothered to check on them. A horrible feeling would wash over me every time I thought about turning the corner and seeing those tall, horrible stalks. I knew they would be dead after a couple of weeks. I knew I would soon feel alone again. But one day, as I was cooped up in my bedroom, I heard my mom.
So that's probably going to make you look sideways at your mother's flower garden going forward. Sorry about that. I mean, I shouldn't be sorry. Alex Kister should be sorry. Sorry, I need my go-go juice. I don't usually record on a Saturday. This is new for me, so I need the coffee. I was really surprised by this. Not that I don't expect great caliber of work from Mr. Kister, but this was not what I expected it to be. First of all, from a technical standpoint, it really felt like a very perfected form of the things that he's good at. I liked the use of archival footage of the plants. I liked that we had our classic picture, text, narration just over images, things like that. I think that's very classic Alex Kister, very classic early Mandela catalog. And, sorry, my cat is messing with cabinets or something. My cat also did this. So I know some of you were like, oh, he's so cute. He's evil. He's definitely been experimenting with the Mandela catalog stuff with more like filming, like a traditional short film, which is totally fine. I'm okay with that, but I do enjoy some more classic analog horror stuff from time to time. I think that Botanophobia does a great job of relying on tension over there's really no jump scares in this at all. It's just listening to Stephanie tell this story and knowing that something is off, knowing that something is wrong, but really waiting for like the other shoe to drop, and that's my favorite type of horror. I'm pretty open about that. I love tension, I love dread, and drag it out. Drag it out as long as you can, I'll be happier. So I think this did a really good job with that. And I also think dealing with a phobia from the perspective of the person with the phobia is interesting because it puts you in their mindset. Like, I'm not scared of flowers, of plants, even like weird, like the plants that she talks about, like Venus flytraps or, weird body part looking plants. I'm not freaked out by that, but when you start listening to a person describe why it terrifies them, you get it, and then you start to get scared. So I enjoyed that. I think it was very, very classic analog horror and aesthetics, so I appreciated that. But the thing that made me even want to bother making a video about this is the story. And I think there is a lot of subtext in this. Like, yeah, on surface value, it is plants scary, plants sentient, which is great. That's cool. I think that's a fun concept and not really one we've necessarily seen in internet horror a ton, besides, like, if you want to count, like, the Diana house, but I don't think that counts because that's just not a normal plant.
So I think I'll take a white chocolate mocha with non-fat milk, extra hot, and I want you to eat me like a bug.
If that makes sense. So we have our two characters here, Stephanie and Delphine. Inherently, the relationship of a mother and daughter is more often than not a tenuous one. Yes, ideally in an ideal world, all mothers and daughters would be best friends and love each other so much. But I think we all know from real experiences that does not happen very often. I personally am lucky enough to have a quite good relationship with my mother. So a lot of the stuff I'm talking about here is not necessarily my personal experience, but I certainly, I've been exposed to these type of relationships before. To me, what this story is telling at its true core is a daughter competing for the love of her mother. And I think that can be interpreted in many different ways. I think that the flowers, the plants in this situation could be many things. I think it could be, a younger sibling that gets born, or perhaps a male sibling that gets born, a brother that's favored simply because he's a boy. We all know the toxic boy mom of it all.
I never thought that I would be that toxic boy mom. I love my 4 kids equally, but that last little boy just hits different.
And perhaps this sibling is, very aggressive and like almost borderline abusive to Stephanie, but Delphine pushes it off saying like, no, it's fine. It's fine. You're overreacting. You're making a big deal out of this. Like, it's just your brother. Why are you doing it? Like, why do you care? I think that happens a lot in sibling dynamics. Again, I'm an only child, so I'm kind of talking out of my ass here, but, like, I have friends. I have family. I see these dynamics play. And when I say abusive, I don't mean, like, necessarily capital A abusive, but just like bullying, bringing down upon. I mean, you could go all the way to like capital A abusive. That certainly happens, but I mean just in a general sense. It could also be like a romantic relationship that Delphine may have had. You often see women choose, their boyfriend over their kid. They will go out of their way to ignore their kid, make their kid uncomfortable, and, make complete life decisions based on, this new partner because they crave having a spouse or having that stability of having a romantic partner more than anything. And oftentimes they're like, oh, well, my kid will be better off if they have a father or mother figure that they don't have. And it's like, not necessarily. They just need you to be a good parent. I also don't have kids, so I'm really armchair psychology today about things I have no right talking about. And in this case, when Delphine gets rid of these flowers, of the plants, and then, like, resents Stephanie for it, you can see that as, like, well, I broke up with him, but you ruined my life. I can't ever be happy. I'll never be happy because of you. But aren't you happy now? I did it all for you. Like, that's very much the vibe I get. And again, that's just an example. I also think, from Delphine's perspective, she could view it that she's had to give up her passion or her life in general to be a mother. Women are often forced to put their desires and wants and needs on the back burner once they have children, because even if they are married, they're often the primary caregiver. They have to take the load of the childcare and household duties, even if they have a job. But sometimes, especially in this economy, women are forced to give up their jobs because, the families can't afford childcare, so then the woman is often the stay-at-home mom and has to give up her career or whatnot. And of course, there are women that want to be stay-at-home moms, and that's great. I'm not talking about them necessarily. But, like last year, a big talking point was that Ballerina Farms lady who's made her whole online identity being like a trad wife on a farm, but she was like a Juilliard trained ballerina, and this man that she married straight up just like forced her into being a domestic servant and buys her like aprons for Christmas, even though he's like a millionaire and she can't be a ballerina anymore.
Hoping their tickets to Greece.
Where's it from?
I don't know, the boys took it off.
I took it off.
It's from Ukraine.
So, plane tickets? Ooh, a hat I can wear in Greece.
That's not a hat.
It's not.
Oh, my egg apron!
Eggs in it.
Great, then you can gather eggs.
So cute. It's really cute. It's a cute one.
That's the best. You're welcome.
Thanks, honey.
Not for a long time.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You should never resent your child for that. That's a societal problem, not the child's problem. The child is always the innocent in this situation. Like, you chose to have the child, or, you were choosing to raise this child. So you can't put that on your child, but unfortunately that happens a lot, and that's where you get the generational trauma of it keeps happening and happening and happening. And I love the whole part of Stephanie going into therapy, and, her mom resents her going into therapy and saying, you're not going into therapy because you're fear of the plants, you're going to therapy because of me. And Stephanie, realizing quietly to herself, like, absolutely, it's because of my mom. Because the botanophobia would not exist if her mom didn't make everything about the plants all the time. That is, the problem is the mother's obsession with, this other thing, which in this case is plants, and her, complete just ignorance to her child and the needs of her child. So, I think it's a really smart, weird, different metaphor on, like, generational trauma and specifically the relationships that daughters and mothers have. And it is heartbreaking when Stephanie realizes that she's talking to Delphine's talking to her plants more lovingly than she ever did to her, and it's like, in this case, it's an inanimate object. It's not even another person. And of course, the horror comes in with, you know, the sunflowers being sentient, the sunflowers being alive, and I think that that is just a physical manifestation of that resentment. And that even when Delphine is gone, she has died, the resentment is going to fester and get worse because they never smashed their beef when Delphine was still alive. They never acknowledge it. They never had a hard discussion about it. In this case, I'm going to say the term abuser because it does feel like Delphine was like emotionally abusive because she was like negligent to Stephanie. When that figure dies, it does not always give the victim closure because, you know, there's so many questions left afterwards. Like, Stephanie, yeah, overheard Delphine talking to the sunflowers, but she never confronted her about it. And because those questions will never be answered, the sunflower becomes more of a problem. Like, it lives on even though Stephanie stops taking care of it. It becomes more humanoid with, like, the eye. And it finally speaks directly to her. So this is, like, a problem she will never get over now. Like, no matter, I think, how much therapy and how much processing she tries to do, because she's never able to actually confront her mother, it cannot fully go away. Like, it's going to affect her for the rest of her life. And there's that shot where you see Delphine with, you assume, Stephanie in, like, the little bassinet and, like, the sunflowers off to the side. And to me, again, that's a physical representation of, like, this shit started day one. This shit started before Stephanie was even born, because Delphine probably had some bullshit with her mom. And if Stephanie has kids, she's probably going to have some bullshit with her kids. It is the generational trauma that just will not go away. And I think it's really cool that Alex chose flowers as this motif, something very traditionally feminine, but very alien, very not human. Plants are weird. Like, they're not your typical, I don't know, you can't, like, connect necessarily with a plant, but you know that, like, they're older than us, they'll be here after us, they're everywhere, they're all around us, you can't escape them. And especially choosing a sunflower, which, you know, like Stephanie even said, like, there's nothing that threatening about a sunflower. Anything can be warped into being a threat when it's weaponized against you, the way that Delphine has weaponized, you know, her passion against her daughter. And just from a horror perspective, I want to say the sunflower facing in the room, like, looking in, is so scary because sunflowers always grow facing the sun. They grow in the direction of the sun. They are always looking at the sun. So that plant did gain sentience to turn around and look inside the house and directly confront those women, which, that's just good horror. Like, that is more effective to me than a jump scare any day, because when I looked at it and I was like, that feels weird, and then I realized why it felt weird, and it gave me chills. I love it. I love the plant talking at the end. I just think this is a great little psychological horror. I feel like I've been overanalyzing a lot of analog horror lately. I don't know if it's the grad school coming out in me or what, but this one was just kind of begging for it. And I think I like seeing female stories told in internet horror. I know this was made by a man, but sometimes they get it right. That sounds like I'm dissing Alex Kitzer. I'm not. I'm not at all. You wrote these female characters very well, Mr. Kister. So yeah, I really liked this. I feel like it's probably a standalone. Like, he's done a few standalone projects. I mean, I would watch more if there was more, but, I hope he keeps doing these. Like, I know there's a lot of pressure on internet horror creators who have such big, like, legacy series to stick with those legacy series, but, sometimes inspiration calls and you just gotta do what you gotta do. Like, imagine if Kane Pixels just only did Backrooms and we never got the oldest view. Or, you know, Manticore didn't do early Batters of the Universe because everyone just wanted Monument Mythos. Like, I love when our, like, big, you know, creators do something different besides, like, the series that everyone's excited about. Because it allows them to flex their skills in different ways. Because, like, there's stuff in this that just wouldn't make sense in the Mandela catalog. So I love seeing new stories from creators we love. You know, I want more of it. And I love how creative internet horror is being right now with just all the different subjects. Botanophobia is such an interesting thing to make an analog horror video about. Like, I feel like analog horror is reaching its creepypasta phase in that, like, we're just throwing shit at the wall and it keeps sticking, and thank God. Because it's really adding some new life to the genre. And I'm loving it. I've been covering so many different, you know, like, thematic subjects, you know, so I'm excited. I think 2025 has been, like, a banger year for analog horror already, and it's only March, so I cannot wait to see what else we got coming. I'm excited to see whatever Alex does next, whether it's Mandela or something else. I will be seated, I will be watching, but I really loved this. I don't know, I definitely psychoanalyzed. But, you know, at this point, if you're a returning GlitchWitch viewer, I think you came here for psychoanalysis. I love to read way too far into things. That's my whole gigaroony over here. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to Alex Kister. You know, watch the video on his channel. I know I showed the video in its entirety. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to poach views, but this is one I know sometimes people do get a little freaked out watching this stuff by themselves, so I'm trying to, you know, be here to help you. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank my YouTube members with the Creepypasta OCs up on screen, and then in Survival Horror Emo, we have E-Rob and So Club Punk, and then in Analog Horror Scary Face, we have Kira Coffer. If you would like to become a YouTube member, there's a little join button down there. But like and subscribe and comment and sharing, that means the world to me. If there are any analog horror series you would like me to cover, any creepypastas, any ARGs, anything like that, please let me know below. I certainly have some that I am working on. This is a shorter video this week, actually, because I'm trying to cover a longer analog horror series that just concluded, and I needed a little bit more time to marinate on that and, like, really collect my thoughts, whereas this was very much stream of consciousness. I watched this and I immediately knew what my thesis was. So stay tuned for that stuff, and hopefully I'm going to have the Silent Hill 2 video out at some point this spring. It's just, sometimes when there's something I really love, I panic about making a video about it because I don't think I'll ever do it justice, but then I wait too long and then it's crap, so we'll see. Please be patient with me, but always more analog horror, always more creepypasta, so I love your suggestions. Please leave them below. And thank you so much for watching. If a sunflower is looking at you through your window, cut that shit down. Throw it out. Burn it. Because that's not natural. Bye.